Hello, welcome to the new Gambeson video. I will be making a Gambeson to match the padded shots that I made in the last video, and this is the design that I have settled on. As you can see, it is two colors, and the bias tape will be alternating colors just like the sections of the Gambeson itself. Now these are the measurements that you will need. These ones specifically are for the person for whom I am making this Gambeson, but it will be necessary for you to get all these same measurements if you wish to make a Gambeson for yourself. These are the measurements here. I have the circumference of the neck. Now you want to leave just enough room to get one finger inside, and I got 17 inches for that. The width of the shoulders is 42 inches. The length of the jacket itself, 32 inches. The distance from the neck down to the waist is 14 inches. The width of the waist is 40 inches. The width of the hip is 39 inches. The width of the chest, 42 inches. Now here the bicep is 13 inches. The hand is 10 inches, and this one here is important because you want the sleeve to be wide enough so that the person can actually get their hands through it. I have the elbow width here. When you take this measurement, you want to bend your arm 90 degrees and then wrap the tape around and make sure it's over your elbow. Here I have 12.5 inches. The distance from the shoulder down to the elbow joint is 14 inches, and then the total arm length itself is 23.5 inches. These are all the measurements you will need to make a Gambeson. These are the items you will need to make the pattern for the Gambeson. I have here some Bristol board. I just got this at Dollarama. It's fairly cheap, and I like it because it's nice and thick, and it means it's not fragile, and it makes it easier to draw your pattern onto the fabric. I have here a ruler. Now the bigger the ruler, the better, because it makes it easier to draw the lines you need. A marker for drawing the lines. Some French curves. Now these are really cool, and they make it a lot easier to draw curves and make it all nice. And then a pair of scissors, and that's basically all the stuff you need to make the pattern. Alright, those measurements we took, we cannot use to make the pattern directly because the Gambeson would be skin tight and it wouldn't be comfortable. So we're going to have to add some fabric, and I've decided to add 5 inches to all the width measurements. So as you can see here, we have the chest and shoulders. That was 42 inches. I'm adding 5 inches, and that gives us 47. Now we will be making quarter pieces for the body pieces, so I divide that by 4, and that gives us 11 3/4 inches. The waist was 40 inches. I'm adding 5 inches. That gives us 45. Again, we're making quarter pieces. Divided by 4, that is 11 1/4 inch. Now I will only be adding 1 inch to the arm width. So we had 13 plus 1, that's 14 inches. The elbow width was 12.5. I'm adding 1. That gives us 13.5 inches. The hand width was 10. I'm adding 1. That gives us 11 inches. Now I want the Gambeson to flare out at the bottom. So to do that, we will take our chest and shoulders measurement, which was 11 3/4 inches. I'm adding 4 inches to that, and that gives us 15 3/4 inches. So these are the measurements here that we will be using to make the actual pattern. Once you have traced and cut out the pattern pieces, you should have something that looks like this. We have the arm piece, we have the top body piece, and we have the bottom body piece. We're going to use those pattern pieces to cut out our fabric pieces, and when all assembled, it will look like this. This is the general shape of the Gambeson that we will be making. Now for making the actual pattern pieces themselves, we're going to start by making a line that is 11 3/4 inches out from the edge, and we're going to make it 14 inches down. Now that we have our first line, we're going to make a second one that is 16 inches down, since that will be half the length of the jacket. And this time it will be 11 1/4 inches out. Now that we have our second line down, we're now going to take our French curve and we're going to connect these 2 points right here. And now that we have the curve drawn in here with the French curve, now we can cut that piece out, and that will be the first piece. There you go. The first piece is cut out. As you can see, it looks pretty close to the miniature version here that I made. Now I'm going to need a second one, so I'm just going to trace it out on another piece of paper and cut that one out. Now that we have two upper body pieces, what we're going to do is we're going to mark one front and one back. This will come in handy once it comes time to make the opening for the neck. And there you have it. The upper body pieces are complete. Now we are going to be making the lower body piece, which is this one right here. And to do that, and to make it easier, first I'm going to line up the top piece with our bottom piece here and mark a point. I have lined up the top piece with the bottom, and now I'm going to mark the point right here. Now that we have our point marked right here, I'm going to make a line, which will be the bottom of the jacket. It will be 16 inches down, and I want it to come out 15 3/4 inches. Now that we have the line marking the bottom of the jacket, I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to connect those 2 points. Now that the 2 points are connected, it's time to cut out the piece. There you go, the bottom piece is cut out. As you can see, it looks like the small one here. Now we're only going to need one of those, and what's left is to make the neck opening in the two upper body pieces. Now to make the neck hole. So to find out exactly the measurements we will need, I take our neck measurement, which was 17 inches. I divide it by 3.14, which gives us 5.4 inches. Now I add about half an inch to that, which gives us 6 inches, and divided by 2, that is 3 inches. So that will tell us how wide we need to make the neck opening on the pattern piece. The front of the neck piece will be 3 inches, and then I will go down 2.5 inches, and the back neck piece will be 3 inches wide, and I will go down 1.5 inches this time. For the front piece, I went 3 inches wide, and then 2.5 inches down, and then I connected those points, and now I'm going to cut that out. And there you have the neck opening for the front piece. Now I'm going to do the back piece. And there is the neck hole for the back piece. As you can see, it is 3 inches wide, and I went down only 1.5 inches this time. All right, and here are the two pieces with the neck openings cut into them. And as you can see, they're not exactly the same, so that when the front piece goes over the back piece, there will be a bit more fabric in the back so that it will hang correctly when worn. All right, now to be on the safe side, I've decided to revise my arm measurements a bit, and I've decided to add a 1/2 inch to all the width measurements. So the arm width is 14.5 inches, the elbow width is 14 inches, and the hand width will be 11.5 inches. Now, because the arm pattern piece is only half, we're going to divide that by 2. So my arm width is actually 7.25. The elbow width will be 7 inches, and the hand width will be 5 inches and 3/4. The first step is I am going to make a point 7 1/4 inches down right here. Now that we have our first point, I'm going to make the second point, which will be 14 inches down this way, and then it will be 7 inches down. Now that our second point is made, I'm going to make a third one, which is 9.5 inches down, which will be the forearm, and this one will be down 5 3/4 inches. Our third point is down, and now I'm just going to connect all these points. All right, now that all the points are connected, that is what our sleeve is going to look like. Now for it to fit better, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the front piece like this, and then here I'm going to use my French curve and attach it this way so it'll make kind of a gusset for the sleeve. And I use the French curve to make the gusset. Now all that's left is to cut it out. There you have it. That is the sleeve piece. Now if you see here, if I take the front piece, it connects and goes together very nicely, and that is how the sleeve will attach to the jacket. Alright, so when I make my gambeson, I do not want the seam to be right in the middle. I want it to be off to the side a bit, and it's going to overlap. What that means is I'm going to need a piece that is wider than the other. Now an easy way to do this is I'm going to flip my front piece around, and I'm going to put it here, and I'm just going to make sure that there's 3 inches here, and then I'm going to trace it out. There you go, I've traced it out and I've added the 3 inches, and now I'm going to cut that piece out. There is the piece once it is cut out, and as you can see, it overlaps and it gives us our seam off to the side. Alright, I'm also going to do the same thing for the bottom piece. So the same thing, I'm just going to flip it around and make sure that I have 3 inches at the top and the bottom, and then I'm going to trace it. Now that it is traced, I will cut it out. And there it is cut out, and just like the upper body section, it will overlap and it will make a seam 3 inches to the right. Here is the completed gambeson. This is all the pieces, and this is what I will be using to make the gambeson in the next video. So until next time.